a lot of the reports that I got of modern times of people who were unsuccessful were their friends literally stopping them from going over, and then the trance kind of breaking.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Monsters Lounge. I'm Jeni.
Hi, I'm Tressa. Jeni, this is so embarrassing.
I know.
I can't believe you came with the same shirt I'm wearing.
But I just got it, and I love it.
It's the best shirt I think I've ever gotten this year.
I think you might be accurate. I think you might be accurate, except for the Monsters Lounge gear that you have.
I'm obviously that doesn't count. Oh. What are we wearing, Jeni? Why don't you tell us all about it?
Listen, we're wearing shirts from the Cryptid Women's Society. Please check them out on Instagram. You can see a ton of lives. The ladies are amazing. We are in fantastic company, very smart and funny ladies. So please go check them out. Yeah. And that's our little promo for that, because they're awesome and we just really want to be friends with them.
Yeah, we love them. Yeah,
that's pretty much it. Yeah, just be our friends.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. Tressa.
Yeah.
We got crazy stuff going on.
So much crazy stuff.
You got
the holidays, you got shopping, you got travel, you got other stuff.
Other stuff? Well, that's fun. All right. Well, we've got a lot of drones flying around.
Oh, those two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are they doing that?
You know, I don't know. There's a lot of conversation about it. I think the most recent thing that I read was that they are looking for radioactive material that's gone missing.
Oh,
how is this supposed to make us feel better about these things?
Oh, they're spraying it, so it's fine.
Are they spraying it with foam, or are they spraying around the radioactive material? Which one is it?
I don't know. I'm not in New Jersey right now. I haven't seen it for myself except for in blurry videos. I don't know what's happening. If someone has any answers, they should probably tell us, because what's happening?
Because we don't understand. Listen, I don't really even understand like drones to begin with.
I mean, it's just government stuff. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, apparently some of these things are very large, and there's some airspace bans going on, temporary bans of what you can fly where, and it's over military areas, and it's all very creepy.
Hello, welcome to America.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We are in America. Would you like to hear about our guest tonight, though?
I would love that, Jeni.
Okay. Hang on. Let me just have this off-the-cuff biography that I'm just thinking of right now.
I'm listening.
We have Christopher Balzano. The last names every single time I work myself up, I get so nervous.
In your head.
I know
it's not a hard name, and you have this.
It's Balzano. That is it. That is so easy. I would mess up Smith at this point in time.
You would. I know this. I have faith in you. I know you can do that.
I apologize to everyone. Okay. Christopher Balzano, almost did it again, is a writer, a researcher, a folklorist, and current host of the podcast Tripping on Legends, which is a really good podcast, BT dubs. He has been documenting the unexplained since 1994 and has been a figure in the paranormal world through his books, articles, and his work as the director of the Massachusetts Paranormal Crosswords and now Tripping on Legends. He is the author of several books about regional hauntings. Dark Woods is another title. Cults, Crime, and the Paranormal in the Freetown State Forest, and Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle, as well as the collection of true ghost stories, ghostly adventures, and the how-to paranormal books, picture yourself ghost hunting, and picture yourself capturing ghosts on film. He also has another book that is, I think, more so recent.
Oh, sorry.
Haunted.
He'll be here in a second. Sorry.
Haunted. Oh boy. Haunted objects, stories of ghosts on your shelf, and that captures stories of everyday people who have accidentally allowed spirits into their house. Please help me welcome Christopher.
Like you avoided it that last time. So we were talking backstage that I am a high school teacher, so you can imagine how much my name gets massacred. Like, forget the whole Balake Aaron thing. And what I always tell, so I get it out of the way, especially with my freshman boys who are giggling all the time about everything. It's Balzano. Don't be scared. Don't be scared of the balls. Just go with it. My favorite though was I have never heard my old website referred to as Massachusetts Paranormal Crosswords.
Did I just say that?
Crossroads.
Did I just say that? Literally?
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious because I'm like, wait, that sounds cool. I want to be part of Massachusetts Paranormal Crosswords. So
I love
if anyone wants to help me publish that book.
Yeah, I love the fact that I'm so embarrassed about mispronouncing people's names because it happens on a regular. This is something that happens on a regular basis. And I've tried a number of different things in order to stop myself. But then I'll mispronounce some other word in the intro, and I won't even realize that I've done it because I'm so embarrassed to begin with.
Not judging you at all. Trust me.
Also, I am a crossword fanatic. So if you can write a crossword book.
Oh, he's going to work on it.
That is all like
work on it now. Yeah.
He's already got the website.
I'm so in.
Although, I don't live in Massachusetts anymore, but other than that, I think I could handle it.
You can still write the book about, the crosswords about.
Crosswords, crossroads. Crosswords.
Thing anyway, right?
Look at me, I'm just bragging with my words now.
Jeni, you're so good at this. I'm glad that you're the one doing this.
You guys got good energy.
I know. I'm going to curl up in a corner and cry after the show. But in the meantime,
oftentimes that's the reaction when anyone hears me talk is they curl up and cry. So I'm totally on board with that.
Same, please.
Yeah, same.
Oh boy,
that's usually because I'm a jerk.
So the first thing that I want to hear about, and it's all about me, is the Bridgewater Triangle, because this. As with a majority of the paranormal things, there's a lot that I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a fascinating, whenever you're calling something a triangle, you know that there's some pretty weird stuff going on.
Yeah. And it's so the Bridgewater Triangle, the phrase itself, the term was coined by Loren Coleman, the cryptozoologist, back in the late 70s when he was kind of hunting down different weird stories, and he's primarily a cryptid person, and so he was tracking down just cases of weirdness, things like that. And that there's a town the three towns in Massachusetts: Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, and West Bridgewater. And what he did is, as he was looking at it, he kind of expanded it outward and discovered that within this triangle, which is about 200 square miles, it's formed by Freetown, which you were saying is one of my books is just about that town. Another town is Rehoboth. Another town is Dighton. Abington. When he looked at, there was more paranormal activity in that area than there was in anywhere else around it, right? And since then, it's kind of expanded. It's not really a triangle. Like the triangle part was originally because that's how his research was, and the Bermuda Triangle was getting very popular as a phrase. And so he kind of used that, but those of us who have looked into it know that it's not really a triangle, and it kind of like flexes and kind of pulses differently. And what you find is in that area, there is anything that you are looking for, any weirdness that you have an affinity for is going to be found there. So from ghosts to cryptids of all different kinds, from Bigfoot to Puckwudgies to Thunderbirds to demon dogs. Zombies. I found a lot of cases of zombies in terms of like in the Freetown State Forest. Then you have all of these UFO sightings. And then what my first book, Dark Woods, focused on is you have all of these areas where the weirdness is higher than anywhere else, but not in terms of the paranormal, but in terms of, at that time, I was looking at divorce rates. Highway 24, which kind of is the backbone of the Bridgewater Triangle, has more, at that time especially, had more lethal car crashes per accident than anywhere else in the country. The teen suicide rate was 3 or 4 times the national average. At the Bridgewater State Prison, it was like the suicide rate of inmates was like 10 times what it was. So you have all of this crazy stuff going on. And actually, when I wrote Dark Woods, it was based on like a question, right? This kind of ideas, can the same energy which both attracts and kind of allows for supernatural paranormal activity also impact us in this kind of mundane way or everyday way of raising the divorce rate, lowering the high school graduation rate, all of this other stuff. And as I looked more into the Bridgewater Triangle, I found that these ghost stories and these stories of Bigfoot and these stories of UFOs were kind of the same juice that was making serial killers and cults being drawn to this place, as well as these things that are like statistical little blips, like I said, like higher cancer rates and things like that.
Well, that's interesting. Listen, shh, Jeni.
No.
Let's take a haunted place. Let's take attachments. I can see something like an attachment affecting your life negatively in so many small ways that you wouldn't even notice. It just seems like, I have the worst luck.
It's one of those things where there were several cases that I cover in Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle where there were couples who had been married kind of past the 7-year itch mark, right? Like, so they were like very comfortable in their relationships. They moved to the Bridgewater Triangle. They had a paranormal experience. And in addition to that, they found themselves almost immediately fighting when they got there. And things like that you think you're not. And for me, people have always asked this because I've been, Bridgewater Triangling it for, those books that you talked about. The Triangle ones are like 15 years old now. So I've been doing this for like 20 years. So I've had enough of a time in kind of researching this stuff to see patterns and to see these waves of things, and to see all of these different theories put forth, but then also now not living there to look at it from afar, what's going on. And I truly believe that it's not like, I think everything's drawn to it, right? Like and I do honestly feel that it is a living, breathing thing. So people always want to say, why is the Bridgewater Triangle more haunted or has more of this stuff than anywhere else? And every time you try to find the origin of it and you peel that layer of onion, another kind of historical, because this is like an area that's been known to be like this for 500 years.
Right. Yeah. I was reading that it's been in certain places in that area have been considered not great for a very long time.
Right. I mean, so it's not even just like a decade or like a few years but it's literally been like, 500 years of Native American stories, then colonist stories, then colonist and Native American stories, and every time you try to find the origin of it, you go back more years and you realize, oh, wait a minute, what I thought was a cause is actually a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, that's super, super interesting to know that that's kind of one of those areas. And I mean, even attachments and things aside, I mean, the physiological ramifications of certain areas, I mean, you can feel it, right? When you go into very positive places or you go into very negative places, and it has to do with my thoughts always, I'm always looking at like how old some place is, right? And what's the geological makeup, because all of that stuff plays into it.
I think that's why the Bridgewater Triangle is such a playground for enthusiasts, is if you are a firm believer that trauma is the sole thing that causes weird things to happen, you're going to find it there. Things like Lizzie Borden, who pretty much everyone knows who Lizzie Borden is. My students even know who Lizzie Borden is, right? Lizzie Borden is in the Bridgewater Triangle. The King Philip's War is in the Bridgewater Triangle. Tragedy after tragedy is in the Bridgewater Triangle. If you're the kind of person who believes it's all geological, it all has to do with nature and all of the stones that you find in there, you could spend a lifetime just exploring the stone structures and the natural stones that are there. If you're a fan of ley lines and that kind of energy, there are supposed to be ley lines that run under different parts of the Bridgewater Triangle. So it really is one of those things that you have both cause and effect are what draw people in. And it's crazy because, you know, when Lauren Coleman was talking about this in the 70s, and then he published Mysterious America in 1983. And it's not like the book was dormant. I mean, it's a bestseller. It's like a classic book. But then it was really in the late 90s and early 2000s that me and a group of other investigators in different fields started to look at things and started to publish on the internet that people, I mean, my website statistics were crazy back in the day when I would talk about a triangle story, not even knowing the triangle existed yet, because so many people were experiencing things and they didn't even know there was a name for it. Either did I. I was probably researching it for like 5 years before I knew there was a name to this area.
That's wild. Like, now, quick question, you might not know, but back over the summer, we were talking to Ronnie LeBlanc, and he was talking about, he brought up the ancient stone structures that are kind of sprinkled throughout, like Massachusetts and New England. Are those prevalent in the Triangle area?
Yeah, I mean, the Wampanoags, who were the Native American tribe of Massachusetts, parts of New Hampshire, parts of Connecticut. I mean, the areas of the Triangle were really the focus of their tribe and their civilization. So a lot of those stone structures do fall within the Bridgewater Triangle. And like I said, a lot of people feel that the King Philip's War, which was against the Wampanoags in that area, is a major cause of the Bridgewater Triangle because it was so devastating and kind of, you know, anomalous in a lot of ways. So I live in Florida now. And so I just finished my latest Florida book, and I was talking about people like, you know, Hernando de Soto and Pizarro, who just like went through and just like massacred everything that they could find.
Oh yeah.
That's not the way the English did things, right? Like the English came and they were like, oh my word, let's be friends.
Yeah.
Do you know about my friend Jesus Christ? Be a Christian now and I'll steal your land. Right? Like they were
also,
definitely not
blankets.
Would you like these blankets? They were not conquerors by the sword, right?
Right.
And so when people present the King Philip's War, which is in 1675, 1676, they present it as like this was this horrible war that happened. But the English themselves and the Wampanoags were both acting almost as if they were possessed, right? They were burning villages. They were killing innocent people. I mean, it was not the typical British conquering of an area that you were finding in the 17th century.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
My theory has always been it's not like a lot of people say that kind of violence is what erupted and kind of cracked something which caused the Bridgewater Triangle. And I'm like, no. The Bridgewater Triangle made those people they normally weren't. And that's why it is considered the bloodiest conflict on American soil in history.
Yeah. That is wild. And more wildly deep than any of the brief things that I was reading. And I absolutely adore that when we find out all of the things behind the paranormal.
Yeah.
You know?
And then the other interesting part of it is then you look at the Bridgewater Triangle and you look within an hour outside of the Bridgewater Triangle, right? You have some of the most influential elements of the paranormal. Within an hour outside the Bridgewater Triangle, that's where you have Ed and Lorraine Warren lived. Less than an hour outside the Bridgewater Triangle, less than a half hour outside the Bridgewater Triangle, you have the area of Rhode Island that ghost hunters came from. Jeff Belanger was born and raised and lives less than an hour from the Bridgewater Triangle. I know, right? You know what I'm saying? So like all of these heavily influenced things that like influence the way we perceive the paranormal, they all were kind of raised in the outside and the outskirts of this. So it's kind of almost like, you know, that whole idea. I don't know if you guys are Star Wars fans, but like the evil rises up and the good rises up to meet it. Like it has to be balanced, because all of these people who are, you know, were the influential forces in the 21st century for the paranormal, like so many of them are stationed right near the Bridgewater Triangle.
It's almost like it's following like a natural flow of things, right? Because the negative, it always comes with the positive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because when I wrote Dark Woods, which had to do with a lot of the cult activity and the crimes that were going on there as well. I mean, there was a lot of negative criminal, really hierarching cults, as well as lower level, darker cults. But you could almost say person for person, you could find people who were practicing a much wider form of magic, a much more positive form of magic, using the forest's energy that way. They never got the press that the serial killers did, but like still, it was, you know, like it was, you know, kind of those things were working alongside each other. So I honestly do feel that. But I also feel in some way that the forest, as a living, breathing thing, actively pushes or brings in negative things and tries its best to push out positive things. And so where I think existing in nature, you have those things balanced. I also think that it's nature that's not natural. So it brings something that can make decisions and has intent. I think it pushes out as much of the positive as it can.
I want to hear a little bit more about that theory right after this.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that Dave.
Again, booted for Dave Schrader, like the story of my life.
Tell me about it.
Hey, listen, even our friendship, I'm sometimes booted for Dave Schrader. So
I gotcha.
Yeah, I get it. No, I love that. I love that idea. And over the summer, we were in the Columbia River Gorge, and we were talking to James Shubsky. See the last names. I can't get it. Anyway, we were talking to him about like the makeup of the gorge, and he had some very similar thoughts. You know, that an area sort of pushes and pulls with the paranormal.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of way tries to infect. Because I'll give you two examples of it. One, the most haunted place. People always say, what is the most haunted place in the Bridgewater Triangle? And people have their own favorites. And the Hockomock Swamp gets like a huge deal. But I was like, well, that's not really haunted. And I'm more of a ghost person. So for me, it is this place known as the Assonet Ledge.
Oh, do tell,
the
please.
Assonet Ledge has been the site of multiple suicides. People go to the top of this ledge. They're overcome by this feeling of wanting to jump, which comes out of nowhere. And then people have committed suicide. But in addition to that, the Freetown Forest in general is a dumping ground for a lot of crime. So people are committing crimes in Boston, Providence, Rhode Island, Brockton, Massachusetts. And within an hour, they can go from being downtown of a city to in the middle of nowhere in the forest. And so the forest itself has been the body dump for a lot of crimes. Of those crimes, one of the favorite places for people to dump bodies, because bodies are rarely found, is at the Assonet Ledge at the bottom, because there is pretty much an abyss waterfall, like not waterfall, but like water, because it's a former what do you call it? Where they get rocks. I can't believe I'm stumbling.
Mine.
No, not a mine, but like when they
Quarry.
A quarry, right? Okay. So that water is freezing cold, and in addition to freezing cold, it is also pretty much bottomless. And so people have been dumping bodies there. It's interesting because one of the paranormal is how you perceive it. So people have actually been at the Assonet Ledge, and they have seen these ghost lights floating up to the surface of the water and almost being trapped by the surface and then going back down. Well, if you're a cryptid person, you've got one perspective on that. If you're a UFO person, you're seeing it as something, extraterrestrial. And then if you're a paranormal person, you're seeing that as ghosts. So there's a lot of like that kind of activity going on there. Well, when it was a quarry, a lot of that stone went out to build other buildings.
Oh no!
And all of these other buildings that use this stone are now also ridiculously haunted. Places like Taunton State Hospital, which is probably the first stories I started to record were of the Taunton State Hospital. But then Fort Adams in Rhode Island, the Breakers, as we call them, in Newport, all those extremely rich mansions that are all really haunted, that people tour. All of that stone came from Freetown and came from that quarry. And so it's almost as if, it wants to send these kind of vibes out into the universe. But then the other part of it is that so many of the cults that came through that were on the negative side and more of the criminal side, because law enforcement was really on it, mainly due to the actions of a detective there named Alan Alves. Those cults, in being broken up, that close to the highest level, but not the highest level of the cult, were constantly being broken up. Those cults would then take those ideas and go to all of these other towns in New England. So it's almost as if they were learning their evil trade in the Bridgewater Triangle, and then being forced to kind of
share the wealth.
Yeah, share the wealth. I like what you think. Yeah.
Listen to me. I've never been so happy to be living in the Midwest and not New England at this exact moment in time. I'm just going to throw that out there. So
where are you guys?
We're here. I'm right outside of Chicago.
I'm in Minneapolis right now, but yeah.
I will not do my accents from either of those places.
Thank you.
You can. It would be hilarious. Oh, I mean, thank you.
Okay, I won't really.
No, go ahead. No, it's fine.
Well, I do a haunted tour with a lot of people from out of the state, and I always say that every tour we go on has to have one person either from Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Yeah,
usually one from Chicago. So there
it is.
Accurate. Yep. Very nice.
Very accurate.
I watched a lot of Fargo, so.
Yeah. Listen, you have a career ahead of you. Forget this teaching thing and writing thing.
That's the next career.
So wait, I have with this. I forget what the place is called. Even the quarry, the cliff place ledge. Thank you. Is this okay? I can't even put this into like an actual question. Just what?
I'll wait for you.
Because no, it's going to be a long time. So obviously people have been there with other people.
Yeah.
And been like, listen, I feel like I need to jump off this thing right now. And
it's not like that. They don't say it. They're just so overwhelmed by it. That a lot of the reports that I got of modern times of people who were unsuccessful were their friends literally stopping them from going over, and then the trance kind of breaking. So it wasn't even like they were like, I'm feeling like I want to hurt myself. This is weird. It was more of just like, I'm about to do this, and people were pulled back.
Okay, that is
Yeah.
so much different than what I was just thinking
Yeah.
like
the
what's it
intrusive
called?
thought.
Yes, an intrusive
thought
thought.
kind of thing.
And in addition to that, there's a lady, I believe she's a lady in white. It's been a while. She's a lady in white or lady in black, who also is seen committing suicide. And she sometimes lures people, but she's more of just like people are up there because it's a huge party area, right?
Oh,
And
that's
people
not
will
great.
just be partying and they'll be like, hey, who's that woman? Why is she jumping off? And then she disappears before she reaches the bottom. And me now, especially with what I do, because I really focus on the folklore aspects of the paranormal, they've made up so many stories and they're all the traditional things. She went to the ledge to meet her lover. Her lover never showed up. She jumped to her death. And so it's really crazy because I'm obsessed with the crossroads, not the crosswords, but the crossroads, which is where true hauntings intersect with the stories we make up about them. And I think both are celebrated. And so the Sonnet Ledge is a really good example of a place that all of this stuff has been seen. It's in a place where there's a notorious history for body dumps. So people assume that there are bodies in the water as well, right? And they make up these stories about how that comes to be. Or they know people jump from it, so now there's a woman who does it, and she's got a traditional folklore background of the jilted lover. And so it's really one of those places that it can exist for you on a very paranormal level or just a haunted legend level.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea and your show and what that's about, because finding those commonalities, I love finding the commonalities from region to culture to country to all of those things. And why do we have those similar stories, right? There's what I'd like to believe. And then there's what might actually be happening. I
always say ghosts are stories about the dead, but a ghost story is a story about the living, right? Because there are expectations, there are familiarity. So when we have the paranormal that happens, right, we don't understand it because it doesn't rationally happen in our world. And so to make sense of it, once we come to terms with that it happened, we have to put it through filters that we know, right? Mm-hmm. And so we fall back on classic stories. So we smell the cigar smoke and we want it to be our grandfather who used to smoke cigars. And we've heard that story before from other people. And so we're very comfortable with it being grandpa smoking his cigar, right? Now, if a community does that, you have to go to bigger stories. So you could, as one of the stories that I wrote is, one of the books I wrote is Haunted Florida Love Stories. So it's all paranormal ghostly legends in Florida that have love as the background. And what you find is that every town has their haunted location where Romeo and Juliet played out some version of whatever your town's history is in that location, and that's why their ghosts are there. And I find that part of the paranormal fascinating. And people always say, when I talk at libraries or at events, they always say, well, are you saying the ghosts don't exist? I'm like, not saying that at all. Every place that I've gone to with my show, Tripping on Legends, I can say probably 85% of them genuinely have some kind of weird activity going on. It's just the backstory that we make up, which is kind of sketchy sometimes. But that's fun too. Like, that's part of it,
Right. That's the most fun. But like you said, it's for the people. It's not the actual story. It's just where we want it to be.
Right. And, I'm not sure if the ghosts are like, hey, no, wait a minute. That's not what happened.
Oh, they absolutely are. Are you kidding me?
In the war and my girlfriend was cheating on me, so I shot her. What are you talking about?
That's
we lived happily ever after. Have you met our son, Steven? Like, no, I wonder if the ghosts sometimes are doing that. But then what I find, and if you look at these paranormal landmarks that we have, right? These, everyone can make their list of the most haunted places in America, right? I'm also a firm believer that ghosts are really like attention whores, and that there's some kind of supernatural, like Instagram or Facebook, where they're dying to get followers. Oh my God. So if you take some place like Lizzie Borden, right, the Lizzie Borden house, Ghosts find their way there because they know that people are paying attention. Or all those roads, everyone has, everyone's hanging out trying to be the next Resurrection Mary, in Chicago, because she gets so much attention. So they want to walk that road too. And I think that if it's an intelligent haunting, like, I'm going to go where the people are.
They want to go ghost viral too. It's fine.
You know what I'm saying?
All right. That seems good. So how does this play into, because you have a couple of books on haunted objects as well, right?
Yeah. So what happened is that actually, speaking of Jeff was like, I don't want to write that book. Have Chris write it. And so
that checks out.
Yeah. So I ended up, because there was such a tight deadline originally, I got a co-author, Tim Weisberg, who does Spooky South Coast, which is a podcast and radio show. I should say a radio show out of Fairhaven, out of the Bridgewater Triangle. And he's also at that time was a newspaper reporter. And so here I am, like, all folklore-y, and he's very much like news reporter. So we had to kind of marry our storytelling styles. And so I always say this, like, I just re-released it. We just re-released it independently, but it was originally published by this publisher who published most of their books were about, like, stamp collecting and knitting.
Okay.
So they didn't really know. They were like, we're going to get into the ghost business.
It's the natural next step after knitting.
I mean,
I just did a sweater. Now I got to go find a ghost.
Yes.
And I often feel like the sweaters that people knit for me themselves are pretty spooky. So
yes.
Fair.
So it wasn't, they didn't really know how to promote it. The company went under only a few years after the book came out. And so almost immediately, like within 3 or 4 years, the book was in remainder. It was like crazy because it's a really good book. And so for 10 years, I rolled around in my head, like, why did this book fail? And I realized that it wasn't the time, right? Because it was put out in like 2014, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And in 2014, we were still majorly, it still exists, but the paranormal community and consumers were pushed by reality television, by the ghost shows, right? Sure. More than they are now. And what the book has that people didn't like at that time was that we tell 3 or 4 strong, infamous, sometimes urban legends about a haunted object, and then 2 or 3 real stories. And then, so for example, we talk about a haunted car, but before we get to the haunted car, we tell the story of James Dean and his car and how it was supposed to be cursed and all the parts went out and all the people who got the parts were, they ended up getting into accidents. And then we talked about, Franz Ferdinand and his limousine from World War I. And then we talk about a haunted car that's a real story that we got from someone. And I think at that time, now people love it, but I think at that time, people wanted their urban legends here and they wanted their ghosts here. And they didn't like, I think, because I've gotten feedback, they didn't like this, like, well, is that story real? Is that story real? I'm like, well, if you have to ask whether it's real, you're not getting the spirit of it.
Right.
Right.
And now people dig that, right? Mm-hmm. But for a while, especially people who were buying ghost books, I want 10 stories about my area that are true ghost stories that I can go out and go to those places. Yeah. And so when we started looking at it, we were like, this might have an audience now. And so we republished it. And when we did that, I went through and I updated a lot of the stories because a lot of these haunted objects, because this is like what a haunted object is, it had a life after the story was told to us.
Of course.
Right.
And so many of those stories we had, so many of the real stories we had to, or the ones we got from people, we had to update them because crazy stuff had happened since the book was published originally.
That's great. I love that you updated it and not just like threw it out again.
Yeah, it was selfish though, because it was a really cool, and I'm not even going to say ending because it still is going on for some of these things. But so I had I had a direct run-in with, now I'm going to say the word, and if my power goes out or we lose contact, because that happens whenever I talk about this, especially on a show, And you can actually ask Dave, because we were on his show and both of our phones went out while we were doing the interview with him. The Amityville Horror. So I was contacted by a friend of mine who's a psychic who became his executor. And he wanted me and her to write a book about him, Ronnie DeFeo, the murderer.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actual one who killed his family.
Yeah.
Right.
And she got in contact with me because she was a psychic, but she's like, you're the only ghost person I think is not a weirdo. And so keep in mind, this is like 16 years ago.
Sure.
And she said, I've been seeing dead people my whole life. I've never seen anything like the dark things that are in my house since he sent over all of his paperwork. I've had 3 of my cats die. What is going on here? And almost immediately, I started having like shadow men in my house as I was rolling over in my head whether or not to do this book with her or not. And our conversations on the phone would always get cut off. And it was just like one of those things where we just like, it was really creepy. And so then one night I'm lying in bed. My now ex-wife is lying next to me. I know I'm wide awake because I can hear her teeth grinding, right? Like I know it's not sleep paralysis or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I roll in my head, I'm like, I should do it. I should do it. And I'm saying the words kind of not even in my head, but kind of like under my breath. And I look up and there is probably a 7-8 foot tall shadowy figure at the foot of my bed.
Nope.
Even though I can see no features whatsoever, I'm looking at it. And I'm like, I know it's looking at me.
Yeah.
And then I can tell, because it physically changes, that it turns, starts to walk out the room. And about 30 seconds later, not even, I hear my daughter, who at that time is like maybe 4 months old, start to scream from her room.
Stop it.
In the hallway. Nope. I said the same thing. Nope, not doing it, right? And so that's kind of for me where the story ended, right? Then she ended up writing the book, and she did a whole documentary because she was a firm believer that Ronnie DeFeo was possessed when he killed his family.
Right.
Okay.
And she decided that she was going to exorcise him. And so she performed an exorcism, and they made this whole documentary about it. It was on, Discovery or whatever it was. And I tried to record that show.
How'd that go?
5 different times, and it would never record. Sometimes all the power in my house would go out. Sometimes the recorder would just stop working. Sometimes the cable would go out. I've never actually seen the footage of this exorcism.
That's insane.
And then that's where the story ended. Except then her book comes out.
Yeah.
Haunted Objects comes out, and she sends me a copy of her book. And my son used to every day run to the mailbox to get the mail. Like it was his little thing. He had to do it every day. One day I'm like, go get the mail. Like, why aren't you getting the mail? He's like, I don't want to get the mail. He refused to go to the mailbox. And that's the day that the book about Ryan DeFeo that she wrote came in. I had it at that time. I was getting a lot of books because I was working for Spooky South Coast. I was reviewing books. I was doing it for Ghost Village. And so I would get stacks and stacks of books. And so I had all these books on my workbench in the kitchen, on my work table in the kitchen. And in the middle of them was this book about Ronnie DeFeo. And my son he would walk, didn't know it was there. He would walk, and then he would take a wide berth, like literally do like a round berth around it, continue back on the other end, and keep going. And it was crazy because when that was happening, my mind was thinking, if you know the Amityville Horror story, the same thing where she used to be singing songs, and then she would stop when she reached the doorway, and then she would continue the song as if she had never stopped on the other side of these doorways. And it reminded me of the exact same thing. And then that's where the story should have stopped, but it didn't. Because I'm telling my sister all this stuff, and she says to me, give me the book. I want to read the book. And so I sent her, because by that time I'm living in Florida. So I sent my nephew all of these books about like the folklore behind Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, right? There were like 7 books and then this book. and she never thanked me. And I'm like, what a bee. She never thanked me. Right? And so I just assumed either she didn't get them, right? Because my sister's not like that. Well, I'm sleeping over her house one time and I'm looking at all of those books there. And I'm like, hey, listen, like, where's the Devil I Know book? And she's like, what are you talking about? I never received that book. And so coincidence, like, there are so many instances like that in that Haunted Objects book where things were shipped back and they never arrived there, even though everything else arrived.
That's wild.
It really is crazy. And so it was one of those things where I felt like, how can I not continue that story? Because, you know, that whole thing is still playing itself, or was still playing itself out with that book.
Holy moly.
I don't like
Louise.
that at all.
Etc.
Goosebumps and everything. I'm looking behind me. All right.
We're going to talk a little bit more about haunted objects in just a minute.
Oh, hey, Tressa. Jeni? Oh, I'm just reading my book by international TV sensation, Dave Schrader. I'm reading the book, too. I don't remember the name of it or who wrote it, but yeah. There. I like your shirt. You? I got it on monstersloungepodcast.com. You've got a great shirt, too. Oh, this? That's so weird. I got it at monstersloungepodcast.com too. They have really great stuff. A full variety. I know, right? They have everything. Shirts. Tote bags. Clutches. A phone case, I think. It's the best.
All right. Now that I've done wandering around my house looking for moved objects and things. Oh, this is, yeah. Now, you said something interesting before the show started, that you've actually held both the Robert the doll
and Annabelle.
Annabelle.
Yeah.
How was that? What did that feel like, first of all? Like, what kind of vibe did you get?
So I physically was able to touch Robert the one time he left Key West. So for those who don't know, Robert the doll, before Annabelle came and was like, all like snooty and stuff, Robert was
you got permission, right?
Right? Okay, so what happened was...
Okay, all right.
That's my favorite start.
There was a convention in St. Pete. And so they brought him out of Key West for the first and only time. And he was at this convention. And he was probably like 15 feet away from me. And I hadn't the slightest idea who he was. And then all day people were coming up and asking me to take pictures of him. And so I'd take the picture, and then they'd come back laughing and say, like, okay, no. Now ask to take the picture. And I'm like, okay, can I take the picture? And I was take the pic. And so at the end of the day, the organizer of the event took Robert out of the case and was kind of marching him along. I always say marching him around Simba style.
Oh, as one does.
And everyone was chanting, Robert, And then I was able to like reach up and like touch him and like, a little bit. I've since seen him a few other times being in Florida.
And did you apologize for not asking permission to do all of those things?
I felt like we had gotten over it. We had worked through it by the time I had actually gone down to Key West.
Nice. That's good.
But I always joke that like I've loved two women in my life, and I lost both of them after seeing Robert. So I like to blame him. Mm-hmm. It's not me.
No, obviously not.
And the last time we didn't go see Robert, but what we did was we talked ourselves into the attic that he used to be kept in. Mm-hmm. There's a bed and breakfast there now called the Artist House. And so we went there. My co-host at the time, we were pretending we were getting married, and we wanted to use the Artist House for our reception. So we warmed the guy up, and it took him about 20 minutes to realize that, like, we really were just like Robert freaks. And so he's like, you can't go into the attic. It's an insurance thing. No one goes into the attic. Blah, 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 blah. And so it took us probably about another 20 minutes of talking. And then I was like, okay, all I want you to do is take my phone and you go into the attic and take the pictures for me. And so finally I got into the attic. And so nothing unusual happened, but it's interesting to be standing there and you're like, I'm in the middle of like ground zero for this ghost story, right? For this like haunted legend of Robert. Like it started here. It's like, obviously things were going on in the house, these little accidents were happening, but it really kind of made it to the next level when they took that doll, put him in a case and put him up in the attic, and he started getting out and looking out the window, right? I have friends who are like, my dad used to walk by and the doll would be hanging out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Or escaping to downstairs, like this attic, excuse me, was really like where it transcended just a creepy doll. And I'm standing there going like, this is pretty damn cool. And we were the first people in that attic since he had been moved, since they had moved him from there, who either wasn't on a movie crew, like a TV crew, or was working for the place itself, like one of the employees. So that was really cool.
Nice.
And then it's hard for anyone to believe now, but there was a time when Annabelle was not famous, right?
Right.
And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm talking like this had to be like 2001 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And my original kind of adventure on this, we had this haunting that they were asking us to look in Brooklyn, and a snowstorm hit. And so there was no way we could drive from Boston to Brooklyn. And so we were just kind of like hauled up at the house, and the snow stopped, and it was a nice day. And it was like, okay, we definitely can't drive to New York in this, but like, what should we do? Why don't we go to the Warrens Museum? And so I called up, and I'm like, and the funny thing is she picks up, right? Like and by that time they weren't well known outside of the paranormal community. Like there weren't movies about it yet.
Right.
And so I was like, is this Lorraine? And she actually knew me because of the work that I had done.
That's awesome.
Crossroads. And she said, "Oh, and she had a southern accent, right? Like kind of like to it." And so she said, "Oh, honey, you can't come. It's still bad weather. You guys can't come." And I'm like, "Why don't you come tomorrow?" I'm like, "Well, you guys are closed tomorrow." She's like, "You come in and I'll give you a private tour."
Shush.
And so we went down, and it was crazy because I'm like, "Is that Annabelle?" And she's like, "Oh, you know about Annabelle?" And I think it's in the Demonologist.
Yeah.
Story of Annabelle. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, I know it." And John and I had talked about it like when we were at a conference together. And she's like, "Do you want to hold her?" So it wasn't even like there was like, "We don't open the case." It was like, I didn't even say, "Can I hold the doll?" She said, "Alexa, stop." And so see, when I start talking about Annabelle, and she's just like went right in, opened it right up. I got to hold her. So, yep, big with the haunted dolls thing.
Yeah, apparently so. I always wonder how those things feel, and how much of it is that anticipation and that buildup of, this is the thing, or
one of the things that I cover about Robert is, and this was more of like, okay, I was taking the writer perspective, right? Like I'm there and I'm kind of like a folklorist, not an investigator. So I'm looking kind of at how people are interacting with him. Like how does his story impact? And what you had where it's even worse now. I mean, I am highly encouraging anyone who's planning on don't go see Robert anymore. Like they've like tripled the prices. They changed all the stories to make them more sensational. Like new owners have come in and that's what happens.
That's a shame.
But when I went there, everyone rushes in. So you go on this whole tour. And the whole time you're like, dude, just shut up. Just show me Robert. Shut up. I don't care about this stupid person. Show me Robert. Yeah. Get there, and they give everyone K2s, right? And they unleash them into the room, right? And so before they would start talking about Robert and the rules and stuff like that, Although they'd say the rules before you go in, but then like they just let you go before they would start like stories. And so everyone rushes into the room. Everyone's flying their meters all around like this, going, "That's the lights are going off." That's crazy, right? But in addition to that, people want to test the not being able to get a picture. And so what you have are a bunch of people running in, pulling out their cell phones were not too popular then, but pulling out their digital cameras, snap, right? And then looking at it, freaking out. "Oh, okay, Robert, can I now take your picture?" And then calming down and taking the picture. Well, Robert's encased in plexiglass, right? So when you take a picture into plexiglass, you're going to get shadows and reflections. And when you have 27 people all taking a picture from different angles, and then the picture is distorted, then all of a sudden everyone's calm, they're relaxed, they're focusing their cameras more. Now you start getting pictures. And so I think that that's the first level of it. But then for those people who don't know, Robert if you do not follow Robert's rules, you're cursed, right? And so behind him and all around him are letters of people who have had bad things happen to them and wrote Robert to apologize, hoping that the curse would disappear, right? Hoping the curse would go away.
Sure.
And so once that becomes established that there's a curse, everything is connected to that curse, right?
Right, of course.
Just think the Brady Bunch and Little Tiki, right? Like everything that went on, they blame that Little Tiki. So I think the same kind of thing happens. Like, accidents happen in Key West all the time, but if you've just come from seeing Robert, guess what caused the accident?
Obviously, Robert. Obviously,
exactly.
Come on.
People miss their flights all the time.
Yeah.
You miss a flight after seeing Robert, and wait a minute, did I say goodbye when I left? Did I say goodbye? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, I think he gets blamed for a lot.
Oh, you think? That's weird.
Yeah, I do. And to be honest with you, most of the haunting-y type stuff is 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. And so when people say, is it the most haunted object? It's like, well, you got to believe the curse, which I do believe in curses, right?
Sure.
But I think that a lot of the hauntings and stuff, they're really in the past. And so I never rank him up there or that museum up there with the most haunted locations in Florida, because I'm like, I don't think that you're going to experience much paranormal activity. You just might be cursed for life and lose the woman you love.
Obviously.
I mean, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Seems
it's fine.
no.
It's fine.
But no hauntings.
Yeah. Who needs love anyway?
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about ghosts. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. Everything's good.
Hey, we got to wrap up. Will you tell us all the things that you need to promote, places where people can find your work?
Sure. You can find me pretty much on every platform. Tripping on Legends is the name of the podcast. Spooky Tripping is me on Instagram. Facebook is facebook.com/Tripping on Legends. TikTok is Tripping on Legends. You can go to the Amazon, especially in this fine holiday season, and just type in my name, Christopher Balzano, BALZ as in zebra, ANO, and get any of my books that are up there, both about Massachusetts and about Florida, and then ones that cover different places all across the country.
Thank you so much.
Is that good promote? I'm really.
That was so good.
No, it was phenomenal.
Great.
Brilliant.
Like, read
work
good,
on
buy
that.
book. So.
Thorough, and now we know what to do. It's great. I appreciate it.
And you're going to be working on that Crossroads crossword puzzle.
I'm definitely working on the Massachusetts Paranormal crossword. See, now you're getting used to the right thing. So.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Listen. Thank you so much for
please hang out for a second after the show.
And we didn't even say the word puckwudgies once.
I know.
Oh my God. I mean, I was saying it in my head the whole time, but that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
That didn't make it to air, though.
No.
And thank you guys very much for having me on.
Thank you
so much.
For us. Everybody else, don't forget to find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Paranormal 60 Network. Like, comment, subscribe, and check out our merch on our website, monstersloungepodcast.com. Send us an email or a comment. We love hearing from people. So until next time, thanks for visiting the Monsters Lounge.